Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable the Board of Examiner, the Honorable my Thesis Advisor, Professor Dr. Niki Lukfirman, SA MBA AKCA. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my undergraduate thesis with the title The Influence of Intellectual Capital on Firm Productivity, Panel Evidence from Commercial Banks in Indonesia. My name is Yosi Amelia Fitri and this is my presentation. This presentation is divided into 5 chapters. Chapter 1 is Introduction, Chapter 2 Literature Review, Chapter 3 Research Methodology, Chapter 4 Result and Discussion, and Chapter 5 is Conclusions. We move to the Chapter 1, Part 1, Research Background. The advance of knowledge-based economy makes the intangible asset has been transformed as the main value driver and vital factor in sustaining the competitiveness of the firms over the tangible and physical assets. Intellectual capital is widely recognized as one of the most influential intangible assets that brings about the development of competitiveness for the companies who are aspiring to be able to compete in today's rapid changing environments. IC, or intellectual capital itself, is defined as the sum of intangible and knowledge possessed by the company which utilized to create the value of the firms. Recent studies has established the importance of IC and its relevance with the performance of the firms and wealth creation of the firms, especially for those who are identified as knowledge-intensive firms. According to OECD, banking firms are defined as knowledge-intensive firms. Therefore, the recognition of IC and development of IC is become the fundamental aspect of banks management. As a business firms, productivity is always being the concerns of banking firms. Moreover, today in Indonesia, the rapid establishments of SMEs put banks into the challenge for the need of advanced financial services which able to accommodate the dynamic transactions. Therefore, the bank in Indonesia need to be technologically sound and to be more innovative to able to be compete. By optimizing the utilizations of its intellectual capital, banks can enhance its productivity and create the greatest value for the firms. Previous studies have demonstrated the relevance of IC in enhancing the firm's productivity. However, most of studies that's undertaken in Indonesia are focused on the influence of IC on banks' profitability than productivity, and the existing studies do not employ both of main productivity measures like employee productivity and asset turnover. Hence, this study is willing to fill this existing gap by assessing a panel data of Indonesia listed commercial banks with the application of value-added intellectual capital model. Based on the research background, the problem formulation to be examined is: does investing in intellectual capital influence the productivity of commercial banks listed in Indonesia Stock Exchange? And the research objective is to determine the effects of intellectual capital and its elements on firm productivity. Chapter 2, Part 1, Research-Based Theory. Best theory that used in this study is resource-based theory. RBT emphasized that firms gain competitive advantage and superior performance through the acquisition and utilizations of its strategic assets, both tangible and intangible, which are valuable, rare, difficult to replicate, and non-substitutable. In general, resource-based theory has considered that IC as the vital strategic assets. According to Balkawi 2003, intellectual capital, which by mean is a specific and valuable knowledge that belongs to the organization, has potential links with its performance and the value creation of the firms. And this is the previous research about the IC and firm performance. Based on the research-based theory and the result of previous study, The hypothesis proposed by this current study is, we move to the chapter 2, part 4, conceptual framework. And this is the conceptual framework. Independent variable is VIC, HCE, SCE, and CEE. And the control variable is firm size and leverage, with dependent variable is firm productivity, employee productivity, and asset turnover. Research methodology. First is research design. This study is a causal comparative research with the quantitative approach. Population of the research is the banking firms which constantly listed on banks on Indonesia Stock Exchange and published the annual report for 2017 until 2019 period. In total, we have 41 companies. And to sharpen the population, we calculate the solving formula from when we get the 94 observation or 32 companies, the minimum sample of the study. And the final sample that fulfill the criteria is 105 observation with the 35 companies. And data source and collections, we use the secondary data with the and we collect through the documentations and record, which we get it from we get the data from the third party, which already available in the websites of the companies. And we move to the next one, is data regression model. It's a pooled common effect model. In the panel data regression model, there are three models, which first one is pooled common effect model, fixed effect model, and random effect model. To select what is the best of those three models, we did the two tests, is a Chow test and Hausman test with this criteria. And the classical assumption test is multi-collinear test, autocorrelation test, and heteroscedasticity test. And hypothesis testing is coefficient determination, partial significant test, and simultaneous significant test or F test. And this is the research regression model. We have four models. With model 1 and 2 use the independent variable is value added intellectual capital, and for model 3 and 4 the independent variable is HCE, SCE, and CEE. Chapter 4 part 1, and this is the result of Chow test, the selection of regression model. Chow test show that probability of all model shown in the table is less than 0.05, means that fixed effect model is most appropriate than pooled common effect model. And for the Hausman test, the probability value is all of the models shown that probability value is greater than 0.05. It means all regression model that will be used in this study will adopt the random effect model or panel random effect model. And this is descriptive statistic. We move to the classical assumption test. The classical assumption test that has taken place in this study is only multi-collinearity test, because according to Gujarati, if the regression model used in the study is random effect model or fixed effect model, so the autocorrelations and heteroscedasticity has been overcome by this regression. So it means if we use the random effect regression, this study are free from the autocorrelation and heteroscedasticity symptoms. So we only need to do the multicollinearity test. From the multicollinearity test, we got that all of the coefficients of correlation matrix shown in the table is less than 0.08, means that all models used in this study are free from the multicollinearity symptoms. we move to the regression analysis. The first one is intellectual capital and employee productivity. From the table, we get the value of adjusted R squared is 0.504, means that 50% of the employee productivity can be explained by this model, and for can be explained by this model. And probability of statistics shown the value of 0.0000, means that the independent variable and control variable has a significant influence on employee productivity. And to test the hypothesis 1A, we look to the probability of VIC, which shown the 0.000, which means it's less than 0.05. It means that intellectual capital measured by VIC has a positive and significant influence on firm productivity measured by employee productivity. Therefore, the hypothesis H1A is accepted. This result indicates that banking firms in Indonesia have realized the importance of IC and its utilizations. The next one is intellectual capital and asset turnover. From adjusted R squared, we get the value is 0.216. It means 21% of asset turnover could be explained by this model. And for probability of statistic, shown 0.00005, which is less than 0.05. It means together, independent variable and control variable has significant influence on the asset turnover. And to test the hypothesis 1B, we see the probability of value-added intellectual capital. The value is 0.00, so it less than 0.05. It means that a variable intellectual capital, or VIC, has positive and significant influence on asset turnover. Therefore, our hypothesis 1B is accepted. This result indicates that banking firms in Indonesia have realized the importance of IC and well utilized its IC in general. The next one is IC components and employee productivity. To test the hypothesis 2A, 3A, and 4A. Adjusted R squared show the value of 0.5678. It means 56% of the employee productivity could be explained by this model, and the rest of it is explained by another variables. And for probability of statistics, shown the 0.000, it means the independent variable and control variable simultaneously have a significant influence on employee productivity. And for HCE, the probability shown in the table is 0.0163 with the positive coefficient. It means that HCE has a positive and significant influence on employee productivity. Therefore, the hypothesis 2A is accepted. And for SCE, the probability is 0.0393 is less than 0.05 with the positive coefficient. It means that SCE has a positive and significant influence on employee productivity. Therefore, the hypothesis 3A also accepted. For capital employed efficiency, it's shown that its probability is significant because it's less than 0.05, but it has negative coefficient. It means the CEE has negative significant influence on employee productivity. Therefore, the hypothesis 4A is rejected. This result indicates that banking firms in Indonesia have well utilized its HC and SC, and confirm that superior performance of the firms is no longer depends on its physical capital, due to CE has negative significant influence on firm productivity. And for IC components and asset turnover, adjusted R squared shown in the table is 0.294. It means 29% of ATO could be explained by this model, which the rest of it is explained by another factors. And the probability of statistics shown in the table is 0.000. It means simultaneously independent variable with SCE, SE, CE, and control variable F size and leverage has a significant influence on the asset turnover. For the SCE, shown the probability is 0.80, which bigger than 0.05. It means it has insignificant effects on asset turnover. Therefore, the hypothesis 2B is rejected. And for SCE, the probability is 0.00 with the positive coefficient. It means the SCE has a positive and significant influence on asset turnover. So the hypothesis 3B is accepted. For CEE, the probability is 0.34, is bigger than 0.05. It means that it has insignificant influence on the asset turnover. Therefore, the hypothesis 4B is rejected. The positive contribution of CEE indicates that banks in Indonesia already have well-established infrastructure which are able to promote the strong firm performance. But the insignificant influence of HCE means that the banking firms in Indonesia need to invest more in the development and training program, so it can fully realize the full potentials of its human capital. And for the CEE, the insignificant influence confirm the physical capital is no longer become the source of competitive advantage for the firms. This is the summary of hypothesis testing with the previous study, which has the same results. We come to the conclusions. Based on the result of study, we can conclude that positive contribution of value-added intellectual capital on board of firm productivity measures by AP, and ATO indicates that in general, banking firms in Indonesia have realized the importance of IC and its potential to generate the better performance by boosting the productivity of the firms. The individual influence of IC components such as SCE, SE, CEE on productivity are found to have various results. SCE is found to be positive in employee productivity but it insignificant on ATO. It indicates that banking firms in Indonesia are not fully extract the potential of its human capital. So the banking firms in Indonesia needs to pay more concern and invest more in the development and training program to improve the efficiency of its human capital. And the next one is SCE is found to has a positive contribution on both firm productivity measure AP, and ATO. It's signaling that banking firms in Indonesia already have well-established infrastructure which able to support the value creation and maximum performance of the banking firms in Indonesia. It needs to be sustained and improved in the future. CEE is found to have negative and insignificant correlation in AP and ATO. This result in line with the RB theory, which proposed that physical and financial capital are unable to provide the long-term competitive advantage of the firms. Overall, the study results answer the research questions. When banks invest in IC, the improvement of their productivity will follow. Research limitations. There are several limitations in this research which can be considerations of the future researchers. The first one, this study does not distinguish between conventional commercial banks and Islamic commercial banks. Thus, the future studies might consider this as a controlling factors, so it can provide a comparison of the influence between the variables on different types of banks. The second one, as a panel data research, time spent of this research is quite short. This study has only took 3 consecutive years, from 2017 until 2019. Therefore, it can be considerations for the future research to extend the time coverage of the study so it can provide the more reliable insight. The last one, since the data is manually imputed by the researcher, the error and incorrect value might be accessed. To minimizing the error, the researcher can extract the data from third party that provide the financial data of the company. Research implications. The implications that can be given by the author related to the result of the study are: the first one, for banking companies in Indonesia, the study result is being a wake-up call to pay more attention and concerns on its intellectual capital, because it drives the productivity and leads the greater performance of the firms, especially for today's modern knowledge era. As a knowledge-intensive firms, banking firms' daily operation is heavily relies on the utilizations of IC. Improper utilization of IC will make the company fade away within the industry. The second one, for the government, accounting firms, accountants, and investors, and also creditors, this research is being a call for them to concentrate and to pay more attention on IC that confirm being a key driver in improving the productivity of the firms. For academics as well, this study is become a reference and literature for future research that willing to examine the effect of IC on firm productivity. Finally, we have come into the end of presentations. Thank you very much for your attention and have a great day.